the killer.
One cold evening, a guy named Jules was lounging in his house, answering calls and ensuring that people walking alone at night got home safely. He was volunteering for a program called Walk Me Home, a service designed to help people feel safe while traveling at night. Now, Jules wasn't a cop or anything, just a guy with a phone and a mission to keep people calm and guide them until the police decided to grace the situation with their presence. Basically, he was like a life coach, but for people too scared to walk home alone. That night, Jules was busy fielding calls from across the city. Suddenly, his phone buzzed again. This time, it was a woman named Clara, but the weird part, she didn't say a word for a long time. Jules, being the cool-headed guy he was, could immediately tell from her shaky breathing that she was terrified out of her mind. Like any good volunteer, he gently coaxed her into spilling what was bothering her. After some time, Clara finally broke the silence and told Jules that she had been threatened by none other than the notorious calendar killer. Now, this guy wasn't some average creep. He was a full-on psychopath who had been terrorizing the city for months. 2 weeks ago, he had given Clara a twisted ultimatum. On December 6th, either she or her husband, Martin, was going to die. Yeah, nothing screams romance like sharing a death threat with your spouse. Jules, trying to be the voice of reason, told Clara to find a safe spot to hide. But Clara threw him a curveball. She said she couldn't go back home. Now Jules, with his sixth sense tingling, suspected she wasn't telling him the whole story. After a bit more conversation, Clara finally confessed. She was a victim of domestic abuse. Apparently, when she told her husband, Martin, about the calendar killer's creepy threat and the bloody date painted on their wall, Martin thought it was a joke. This guy had the audacity to mock her, laugh it off, and even told the cops that his wife was imagining things. Martin clearly thought he was living in a sitcom, not a crime thriller. Frustrated and scared, Clara had run away to her lake house, where things took a darker turn. She admitted to Jules that she felt so hopeless she had tried to take her own life. Jules, panicking but staying professional, begged her over the phone to stop and hang in there. Meanwhile, you could almost hear him muttering under his breath, "Why am I doing all this for free when the cops are probably eating donuts right now?" Luckily, Clara decided not to give up on her life at the last moment, and Jules felt a wave of relief. Just then, Jules' father called to check on him and asked if he could help with anything. Jules asked his dad to find Clara's lake house address because he wanted to go there and rescue her, or so he let her believe. It's like Jules had watched one too many action movies and thought he was a hero. Jules' father, somehow channeling Sherlock Holmes, managed to dig up Clara's address, and he arrived at the lake house before Jules even had a chance to stretch his cape. Meanwhile, Clara realized that the calendar killer had figured out her hiding spot. She noticed that he had once again written her death date in blood, this time on a glass door. Because nothing says "I'm a psycho" quite like interior decorating with blood. From a distance, Clara spotted Jules' father, but mistook him for her husband, Martin. Panicked, she bolted out of the lake house before Jules' dad could even say, "Hey, I'm not that guy." Clara ran for her life, but, in true horror movie fashion, tripped and fell unconscious. Classic move, because running in a straight line is apparently too much to ask. Thankfully, a passerby named Hendrik came to her rescue and got her into his car. Just when things were looking up, a car screeched to a stop in front of them. Guess who? Yep, it was Martin, the walking red flag himself. He dragged poor Hendrik out of the car and beat him up right there in the middle of the road. Because nothing says "I'm a well-adjusted adult" like assaulting a stranger in broad daylight. Until that point, it wasn't entirely clear whether Clara was really being abused or if her mind was playing tricks on her. She'd been diagnosed with dissociative disorder, which Martin used to his advantage, convincing everyone she wasn't mentally stable. Clara told Jules a chilling story about Martin taking her to a secret club where powerful people engaged in twisted, non-consensual activities. It was like something out of a creepy mass ball nightmare. Martin had spiked her drink, making it easier to manipulate her, but Clara managed to escape. That's when she first reached out to Jules for help. Later, when Clara got into Martin's car, it became painfully clear that she was indeed a victim. Martin, the king of gaslighting, blamed her for his abusive behavior. He claimed her very existence triggered his impulses, because apparently accountability was not on his to-do list. As if that wasn't bad enough, he assaulted her again while telling her to behave herself. The irony was thicker than his sense of entitlement. One of the most disturbing moments was when Martin forced Clara to eat seafood, knowing full well she hated it. Seriously, who uses seafood as a weapon of control? That's villain behavior straight out of a cooking show gone wrong. This showed that abuse isn't just physical. It's also the mental anguish of living in constant fear and having your choices taken away. Clara felt utterly trapped, unsure how to escape the grip of her monstrous husband. The biggest twist came when Clara, thinking she'd finally outsmarted Martin by locking him in the car and taking the keys, entered her house. Surprise! Jules, the nice guy from the helpline, was chilling in her home like he'd been invited for tea. Apparently, Jules thought breaking and entering was a standard customer service perk. Turns out, Jules had been tracking Clara's every move. He had even kidnapped Vigo, the babysitter, and kept him captive for ages. But here's the kicker. Jules was the calendar killer all along. Because nothing screams trustworthy volunteer like a secret life as a serial killer. Jules then laid out his twisted ultimatum. Clara had to kill her husband Martin, or face a painful death herself. Clara tried to reason with him, saying she was planning to leave Martin anyway. But Jules wasn't buying it. Classic villain move, ignoring logic for the drama. Meanwhile, Martin managed to break the car window and escape, proving once again that this man was more stubborn than useful. He barged into the house but couldn't overpower Jules. Honestly, Martin's fight skills were about as effective as a wet noodle. Jules tied both of them up and told Clara she had until midnight to do what he asked, or he'd kill her. Then came the big reveal about Jules' tragic backstory. His wife, Dejana, had suffered severe abuse from her father, leading to years of depression. Eventually, Dejana took her own life, locking her children in a room to shield them from the trauma. But a fire broke out, killing everyone except one daughter, Fabiana, who later succumbed to her injuries in the hospital. That devastating loss broke Jules. He began targeting families where women were victims of domestic abuse. He gave these women a grim choice: kill their abuser or face death themselves. Talk about taking the concept of justice and throwing it off a cliff. However, Jules' plan didn't go as intended this time. Just as he was about to kill Clara, his father, who had been following her since she left the lake house, burst in and shot him dead. Imagine surviving parenting only to end up shooting your own kid. It's like the world's darkest episode of Father Knows Best. Jules' father had realized his son was the calendar killer after recognizing his handwriting on one of the notes shown on TV. He knew Jules wasn't in a good mental state and had tried to help him, but it was too late. Jules had gone too far, and there was no saving him. Clara knew she had to figure out a way out of her nightmare, because staying with Martin was like signing up for a lifetime membership in misery. She realized Martin wasn't the kind of guy who'd lose sleep if she didn't survive his abuse. Honestly, if Clara disappeared, Martin would probably blame bad vibes and move on to ruin someone else's life faster than you could say, "Run, girl, run." Being the Secretary of State, Martin had power and influence. So Clara knew going to the authorities would be useless. She needed solid evidence that could expose him publicly, something so undeniable that even Martin's charm couldn't worm its way out of it. In the climax of The Calendar Killer, Clara pulled a genius move. After Martin assaulted Hendrik and forced her into his car, she secretly switched on the recorder on her phone. During their heated argument, Martin confessed to abusing her and even tried to blame her for it. Classic Martin. Gaslighting like it's his full-time job. Clara made the recording public, and when Martin played the victim card, crying to the media about being attacked by the calendar killer, the tables turned. The world heard the recording, and Martin's reputation went down in flames faster than his empty excuses. He was arrested and sentenced to 5 years in prison. 5 years might not seem like much, but for Martin, that's 5 years without ruining anyone else's life. Call it a public service. The ending of The Calendar Killer was satisfying because Clara finally got justice. But the story also highlighted a harsh truth. Not every woman can turn the odds in her favor as Clara did. It emphasized the need for stronger laws to prevent abuse and provide victims with the support they need, especially when they're too afraid to seek help.
Yo, Clara in the house, living in a war zone. Martin's got her locked up, treating her like a stone. Secretary of State, but the dude's just a clown. Gaslighting his way through, tearing women down. She's plotting in the dark, yeah, she's got that fire. While Martin's ego inflates like a flat-out liar. Recorder in her pocket, she's flipping the script. Gonna drop the truth bomb, watch his reputation dip. Flip the switch, drop the mic, Clara's taking flight. Expose the lies, make it right, bring his piece to light. Martin's mask is cracking, can't gaslight the truth. Clara's got the power now, she's living proof. Jules in the background, calendar killer on the scene. Twisted by the past, but his justice ain't clean. Clara stuck in between, a psycho and fraud, but she's playing 40 chess, turning tables like a god. Martin thought he had it all, smug with his pride, but Clara's got receipts, and the truth's on her side. Oh, you big man, Secretary of the State, can't state the truth though, that's a real fate. Flip the switch, drop the mic, Clara's taking flight. Expose the lies, make it right, bring his piece to light. Martin's mask is cracking, can't gaslight the truth. Clara's got the power now, she's living proof. blamed her for your trash. Now the world's watching and you're out of cash. 5 years in the pen, that's where you belong. And Clara, she's vibing to this victory song. Now the world's tuned in, Martin's on the floor. Clara broke the cycle, she ain't trapped no more. The system needs fixing, laws gotta change. For every victim out there locked in the cage. Martin, you're a villain, your mask is broke. Your lies burn faster than your seafood joke. Clara's a queen, yeah, she rose from the pain. Turned her scars into power, broke free from the chain. Flip the switch, drop the mic, Clara's taking flight. Expose the lies, make it right, bring his peace to light. Martin's mask is cracking, can't gaslight the truth. Clara's got the power now, she's living proof. So here's to Clara, a boss through the storm, turning pain into power, breaking every norm. Let this be a lesson to the Martins of the land. Clara's got the last laugh, mic drop in hand.